Cool. Now, again, we're still dealing with the foundations to improve our understanding before we can actually start talking about solutions and XYZ. Now, let's look at another concept here. This is the fundamental structure of all monetary systems, at least the monetary systems that we have um, as a civilization had the experience of for since the beginning of time. Okay, and also the general theory of monetary systems, because people think that our current monetary system is a result of evolution and that's just the way things are, and they really we're just doing the best we can. They don't understand that monetary systems are like they're like a design, like the same way you can say, okay, we're gonna have a car, we're gonna have an aeroplane, we're gonna have a train, we're gonna have a ship. Each one of those are different systems for different purposes. Even monetary systems are very deliberately designed. They did not just come by by accident or evolution. Okay, so let's look at them, because this will really give us a lot of freedom once we understand this. Now, let's first understand the two things that must be in existence whenever you create a monetary system or a currency system. If you say, for example, we're going to create a new currency, okay, or new monetary system, you have to decide, what does this currency or this monetary system represent? Because you can't avoid the fact that it has to represent a someone and a something, like just to sort of summarize it, a someone, to rephrase it, you can say, who owns that system? Is it owned by the people, whatever? But we'll get into that in a second. A something means, what is this monetary system based on? Yeah? What is it based on? Okay? Is it based on gold? Is it based on silver? Just paper? Is it on debt? Is it on whatever? So those two questions must be answered. And these are the fundamentals of the system. And depending on what you choose, you end up with a very different society. So cool. Let's first look at the someone. The someone that owns the system can either be the public, in other words, the collective population. And by that, I'm not talking of the government. I'm not talking of a small bunch of elected officials, and also maybe like, what you call the deep state, the real controllers of any particular nation, the people who are always there, who finance the elections, who nominate the parties and everything, and the candidates, and that's called the deep state, the non-elected, behind the scenes government, the shadow government. I'm not talking about those guys, and I'm also not talking about the official government. When I say the public, I literally mean all the people of a country or a nation or the planet. Okay, that's what I mean, the collective population. Okay, so let's not confuse the government with the public. Again, separate things. So the someone can either be the public, or it could be private entities such as banks or kings. Before, it used to be kings, nowadays it's banks. Or it could be decentralized and autonomous, which means nobody really owns it. It's like asking who owns the internet. Nobody owns the internet. It's a network. It's a decentralized network. Yeah. So in the same way, who owns love? Who owns? You know what I mean? There are so many things. Who owns the ocean? Although that's a natural thing. Okay, let's just keep it easy. Who owns the internet? You can't say this person owns the internet. There are many little networks that interconnect, and that's a decentralized and autonomous facility. Okay. Now, the something. The somethings can be either debt-based. By the way, before we go to the something, no, actually, I'll get back to that in a sec. The something can either be debt-based, which means literally the currency is founded on debt. Okay, this is actually what we're running on right now. Our current planet, like maybe 97% of all countries, are literally running, and I'll prove it to you in a second, monetary systems that are privately owned by banks. And I'll show you exactly why. That's not a conspiracy theory. I'll show you precise evidence. And they're running debt-based. They're creating debt-based money. In other words, a country, has a government. That government issues treasury bills or treasury bonds. Um, those are, in quotes, sold to the private banks. And in a long story, which literally you need to see the visual of it, that is what then becomes the initial money of a country. And then the government prints, paper and coin for about 4% of the total monetary money in the country. 4% of it is, minted in paper and coins. The other 96% is literally produced out of thin air as records by the private banks. So it is the 4%, the physical, that gives the confidence that the rest, the digital or the non-physical, the paper record, just the record ones, is also real. So it's a confidence trick above anything else. And the government also guarantees this trust in the money. But at the end of the day, it is debt based. Now, in the old days, before the 1970s, currency was actually asset based, which means it was backed by gold. You could take a piece of whatever currency that was, maybe it was a dollar or the British pound or whatever, walk into a bank, put it on the desk, and they'll give you an equivalent sum of gold to put in your pocket physically, and you go away. But you cannot do that now. Okay? So now today, money is called fiat currency. Before, it used to be called reserve currency because it had a gold reserve backing it, and then it became fractional reserve, which means it was no longer fully backed by gold, it was only partially backed by gold, and then it became fiat, which means there's no more backing. So it came from being an asset-based economy, the whole world, to a debt-based one. The third option is a productivity-based currency, which means proof of work. That means that you produce something, you get a receipt. That receipt is a means of exchange, or something like that. I'm just summarizing things because we have to move quickly. Now, the best someone to have for a currency is the public, or rather the collective population, or a decentralized and autonomous system whereby no one really owns it, so no one can really control it. And this creates equal opportunity, equal access, and transparency. The worst someone to have is private entities, which means banks or kings. They control and own the system that everybody else must use. Now, the problem with this is that it creates an elite versus non-elite society. The haves and the have-nots, and that gap keeps getting bigger and bigger. It also creates secrecy and Kabbalistic control. Cabal, again, is just a normal English word that means a secret political clique or faction. Otherwise known as a deep state, a state within a state, or the shadow government. Everybody knows that there's such things in just about every country. There are people who pull the strings. So that kind of a system where private entities control the issuance of currency creates that kind of a outcome. Now, the best something is asset-based or productivity-based currencies. And the reason why is that this creates a store of value. Remember, we talked about money and the and let's say gold being able to store value because it cannot just be infinitely printed, and so on. So if you want to create if you're building S or V into a currency, you have to make it asset-based or productivity-based. The worst something to have is a debt-based system because that loses value all the time. And you'll see why in a second. We'll get into it in a second. It loses value all the time. And it does so, and as it loses value through, increasing debt and so on, it's actually transferring that lost value into the system owner's hands. The loss of value, let's say like $100 you have today, or 100 euro or whatever currency, Kenya shilling, is not the same as it used to be 10 years ago. It doesn't buy the same stuff. Everybody knows that, right? This value did not just vanish into thin air. It went somewhere. You know where it went? It goes to the system owners. That's why the gap grows, the rich and the poor, the haves and the have-nots, the elites versus the non-elites. This inflation, this loss of purchasing power transfers from the masses to the system owners. That is what it was designed for, you see. So today, we're actually running most of the planet on private privately issued debt-based currencies.